Oh, that would be telling now. I didn't want to talk about how old I am because that.
Okay. You don't have to say when then. Just like, okay, let's talk about it. What were you like in high school? Is obviously what you're doing now. You're a lecturer. You're this big guy at Edinburgh University. Is that always like? Was that always your plan? Like in high school, is that where you were?
No, actually not. So I went to a boarding school back in Kenya, and I didn't really know what I was going to do. So when we were making choices for courses at uni, I had like a whole mix. I had law, I had engineering, and I had economics, and I then fluffed my science practical exams, both of them.
I also did that.
Did you?
Actually, so I needed to do well on chemistry. So I did really well on my math, did really well on my physics, and I needed to do well on my chemistry so I could take biology next year. Completely fluffed it. I got a B instead of an A. I was so upset.
Well, I caused a fire in my chemistry
exam. Okay, that'll do it. That'll do it. Caused
a fire, not deliberate. I just, I don't know, maybe it was nerves, and I just mixed the chemicals the wrong way and put it on the Bunsen burner, and boom.
Flame.
Fun and games.
Did you get like in trouble? Did like what happened?
Well, they, put the fire out really quickly and carried on as normal. I did not gain my confidence back, so I did not do very well in that exam.
Okay, so you moved on from chemistry. So then how did you, like, what was the transition from high school to uni like application wise? Like,
yeah, so
I'm guessing that it's different in Kenya than here, obviously.
Yeah, no, it is. So you get a chance. Well, you don't do anymore because they've changed the education system now. So in second or first term of your final high school year, you put in your choices, and then you just hope for the best. So I did that, and then when the results come out, you get a chance to go and revise your choices in light of what you've actually achieved.
Oh, okay, that's so much nice. So like you want to go to these universities, but if you've like done better, then you can be like, oh, I want to go to a better university.
Yeah, definitely.
Or like the opposite. I think that's a nicer.
It's better, yeah, but not everybody knew that. So sometimes if you don't go and revise your subjects, then they would, the committee would just put you to any random subject. So if you, for example, you're thinking you're going to do really well and go into engineering or something, and you don't revise, then they just put you in courses that nobody wants to go into, that have lower intake, and that would be like anthropology and things. So some people had that happen to them.
I'd be pissed. I want to do engineering, you put me. Here's the thing, anthropology is great, but that pissed me off.
Yeah.
Because obviously uni is like the stepping stone to everything nowadays. Like, well, not everything, but like it's always been touted as this like, go to uni and then from there you can get a job. So it's like to have this like dream of doing something and then someone else, like the system, fluffs it for you. I'd be annoyed.
Yeah, but if you're not proactive, then you just leave yourself to that kind of situation.
That's also true.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was, because obviously I went through your LinkedIn, I did a little bit of stalking. So it says that you, hold on, let me get it out. It says that, where is it? Where's the university? Your first university was Moi University.
That is correct.
What was it like? Because you were there for 4 years. Like,
I was there 4 years. It was a small village. It was like literally a university campus in the middle of nowhere. So everybody knew everybody. Everyone knew the goss around campus.
Oh, I'd hate that.
And no, it was lovely. So some of my closest friends are friends that I met at uni, because there was nothing else to do. You just go to your lectures and go to the library and you socialize with people. It's a close community. It was really good. I liked it.
You liked it?
Yeah.
So obviously you finished uni. And you've got a 2-year period before you go to Birmingham. So what were you doing in those 2 years?
I was actually in Birmingham.
Okay.
Yeah, so when I finished my university in Kenya, and I didn't work in Kenya, so I graduated in December and started my job in Birmingham as a management trainee. So a lot of my friends, they went on to jobs in Kenya, but I was very lucky. I got my traineeship in Birmingham, so I travelled.
So how did that opportunity arise?
ISEC, it's a student club, an international students association.
And okay, like explore. Give me more.
I thought you know about ISEC.
No, I don't. I'm completely clueless. Fill me in.
So you should go and join straight away if you're still at uni. So it's called Association for the Internationalization something, ISEC. It's a French acronym. So most universities across the world have an ISEC local committee.
Is that ISEC or ISAC?
AIESEC.
AIESEC.
ISEC.
Write that down.
Yeah, do that.
Right, okay. So how did you get into contact with them, or were you just like in the know and like this was your plan? And
well, I was involved in a lot of student clubs and societies at uni because, as I say, we were just in a closed village, university village. So I was doing a lot. I was in the Red Cross. I was in ISEC. I was in SIFE, Students in Free Enterprise. I was in just a whole range of stuff because you need to obviously fill up your time, socialize, and do something meaningful. And this opportunity came up, and we had a lot of international people come to our university as well, like some Germans, English people, so some from Edinburgh actually when I was there, some Americans, all that kind of stuff. So it was interesting. So obviously it's difficult, to go abroad as a student. In Kenya, maybe they're doing it now, but when I was at university, people were almost always looking for something to do after uni. So when I was almost finishing my uni, we just, me and the guy that was VP for traineeships, vice president in the committee for traineeships, thought I had a really good CV and we're just gonna try for a management traineeship abroad. And it was during exams, so I didn't have time to prepare because I thought it was a long shot. And I didn't have internet in my dormitory bedroom, so I just went online in the library and downloaded the web pages of the company I was interviewing for, and then I just opened them as HTML files really on my computer, like from a floppy disk. It's a long time ago.
What's a floppy disk?
You don't know that, you're too young. And I just came from an exam. I never really thought anything of it. I was just like,
I'm kidding, I know what a floppy disk is.
Well, you're a geek.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah. So I just came from an exam. I had very little time to prepare for this phone interview. But because it was a phone interview, I could literally answer questions while studying the website of the company that was giving me this job. And they were impressed, so they gave me the job.
Okay, so you're moved to Birmingham. Birmingham. Okay, you know what I was saying. Yeah. Was that, obviously you lived in Kent your entire life, like you're always surrounded by people that look like you, that talk like you, like yeah. There's that shared cultural thing. Yeah. How was that culture shock of moving to Birmingham, especially like in the 2000s? And
yeah, it was shocking. It was I think Birmingham has a lot of black people, so that's not really surprising, but it was like being an African as opposed to being black and being a minority. There's a lot of Asians in Kenya, there's a lot of Asians in Birmingham, and there's some Kenyan white people as well, and there's lots of tourists, so that itself was not shocking. I think it was more just the the fact that you're living there, so you have to kind of cope with the accent, which was a problem actually, because I worked in a cinema in marketing, and the tradition in the company I was working for, which was an American multinational, was that everyone, including people that worked upstairs in the office, like I was a management trainee in marketing, right? And you had to do an operational shift, like on the floor once a week, selling popcorn, selling tickets.
Oh, that's great.
Dealing with customers. It was really good, but it was really difficult for me because the only sort of white people's English that I knew was on BBC News type of English,
right?
Very kind of home counties type. So Birmingham was really difficult. So I remember when I got an induction on my first operational shift, and these guys said, like, if you want to take a break, you can have as much popcorn or soft drink off the tap as you want. You could have a bouquet if you wanted, a bouquet of Coke. And it took me like a couple of seconds. I was always like 2 seconds behind the conversation because you're trying to work out what could they have been saying. So bouquet can be flowers. We're talking about liquid, so it has to be a bucket. Things like the bus ticket, all that kind of stuff, water. So it was interesting, it was challenging. But I think the most shocking thing for me was just the realization that the type of white British people that I was exposed to in Kenya growing up aren't typical here, because I would be like a very well-traveled, middle-class, highly educated person that you would meet in Kenya, whether it be someone that's on exchange at my uni, or someone that I've met at my dad's work, or we were getting missionaries come, and that kind of stuff. And within a week of being in the UK, I was helping a white English person write a report because I couldn't write in English, and it helped me a lot. I think it was as shocking as it was uplifting for me, because I think since that time I have never felt intimidated by any white person ever.
We love to see it. We love to see it. We love to see it. Because I was gonna ask, like, obviously there was instances of racism, but do you happen to remember like any poignant, like, first? Because obviously you were in Kenya, so you'd already met white people and everything. So like obviously you'd have experienced racism there, no? Am I wrong?
Not in Kenya, no. I think the white people that I'd sort of come into contact with were sort of people at the university where my dad worked, or missionaries, a lot of Spanish and Irish sisters that worked at the there's a small health center where my auntie used to work, and tourists that are lost, sort of helping them find their way. And there was a guy that taught me at college who was Scottish. It's them kind of people. I didn't. Racism is something you saw on telly, like you thought it was like a Black American struggle.
So when you moved to Birmingham, I was gonna ask, did you experience it? Obviously you did, but was it a case of, because it was something that you were so far removed from, like you didn't realize it, or was it a case of like something happened, you were like, no, that's racist?
Well, like it was a very steep curve of just being able to just see racism that's hidden behind a smile.
So like microaggressions.
All those microaggressions, being slighted, like in certain situations, all of that kind of stuff. So you see it, but you can't. It's not obvious. So every sort of black person knows it when they feel it, but you can't actually call it out directly. So that was a really, that was a really difficult thing, I think, for me to navigate in those early days. Yeah.
I'd like to. I'm gonna park something. So I'm gonna ask you something. We're gonna talk about it, and then I think I might park it. But obviously, as someone who came to this country, your experience of racism is contextualized by how you grew up at home. So you have 2 kids, right? And they are growing up in this country and they're experiencing racism. So they're experiencing the same racism that you would face, but obviously that's contextualized with the fact that they live here. So how do you bridge that gap in that conversation with them?
Well, it's just actually through conversations. It's, sometimes we will just be having like a normal conversation about my experience or expectations that I have of them, or some of the things that, I've had to go through to get where I am. So, yeah, it just comes up. And then as they grow, they start to realize it. I think, my boy now at 11, it was funny because, I think from about 8, he sort of started wanting to have, he's got really close, loyal white friends. But he would have, that's like my school friends thing. And this is like my black friends, sort of cousins. They're all cousins, kind of thing. And it's been interesting to see that transition as he's grown. And my daughter is getting into that space as well, where they see their distinction. Not just see it, I think they feel it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because like I feel like I talk about this every episode, but obviously when I think about racism, I may not have been born here, but I was fully raised here from like a baby, and the conversations that I have with my mom about racism are so interesting because even though we're both experiencing the same thing, it's different because she's contextualizing it from the fact that she lived in Nigeria, she lived in a homogenous country where she was like always going to see people that looked like her. But then we moved here and it was a case of, I will be the only black person in a room, or there'll be 2 of us, or if I'm lucky 5. And having those conversations with her were very interesting, like talking about like friendships, and she'd be like, oh, but like don't you have black friends? And I'm like, babe, where are the black people to make black friends with? Do you know what I mean? So I always ask because most of my guests have been first generation in the sense that they moved here in either early adulthood or adulthood. So it's always interesting to see that like you didn't grow up with that. So like your adaptability and the way you've come across it and accepted it and like moved on from it is completely different to the way I would do it.
Yeah, I mean, you go to boarding school, boys only, teenage years, living away from home, and then so I was like maybe 50 miles away from home, and then 250 miles away from home, and then abroad. So it's just the next thing. So you grow thick skin.
I mean, you have to.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else do I want to talk about? Okay, so in your 4 years at 4 years and 8 months at Birmingham, are there like any poignant experiences to you that you look back on and you're like, oh, that was great, or oh, that was shit, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah, Birmingham was really like, on the whole, that's sort of the city that sort of made me, really. Because I've come in, I've worked there in a professional role, and then I've gone into uni for my masters, and then I had to shift to full immigrant kind of experience, because before I was in a bubble of, straight from uni, I'm a university graduate in a graduate job, mixing it with like, other university graduates in graduate jobs, and it was quite a prestigious position to be in, actually, as a young person. I was working in a cinema in marketing, and I had all these people in the BBC and other radio stations in Birmingham, and I had I had free cinema tickets. Like I used to do marketing collaborations with these famous people that do radios, people like you, hey?
I'm flattered.
And you'd be in meetings with their producers and like senior people, and you've got the power. Like we did a couple of competitions once where we gave a whole cinema ticket, a whole cinema theater, and that's me there. I've got 450 tickets. You can run on your show. It's a big cost to the cinema, right? But for them, it's big. And I was 23. That's my experience coming from my university in Kenya to here. And then afterwards, when that I've transitioned to being a student, and I then had to sort of leave that job because I'm a student now, right? And
oh yeah, because you're not allowed to work more than 20 hours, is it?
Yeah, I had to change my visa to student visa, and I had to shift then to like like a typical African diaspora situation, like back then. Right now there's more professionals in, but it was a huge shock for me. Like, I'm now not going into meetings with people from the BBC. I am actually desperate for a job in security or like stewardship at events, working for an agency, and you holding onto your phone waiting for a call. So that was really shocking. That was and obviously being broke and asking for money from home, and it's a lot when it's being sent, but when it arrives it's not that much. So yeah, that was interesting.
So, like, what got you through that? What, like, thing were you telling yourself as you were struggling through that?
It's just, just looking at the end goal, really. It's like, I am a university, and this is going to open doors for me when it's finished. And that was it. So, it's just that process. I mean, the first stint as a master's student, that was difficult at some point, because I gave my dad like 2 months notice. Dad, I want to go to uni, do my master's. And African parents are very pro education. He couldn't say no, but he hadn't had much time to prepare. So then, if they're gonna, and it's an international student rate, you haven't given them much time at all to prepare.
So your parents covered the costs for...
Yeah, but then the deal was you have to then pay for your living expenses. So 20 hours a week is not enough to earn a livelihood in the UK, but it's just the way I had to work. So I had to learn very quickly how to like just survive, and yeah.
So at the end of that road, you graduated, because obviously now your student visa, like, so what was that like unstable period like of like graduating, and then, or had you already like took the steps to be like, I'm gonna stay in this country?
Well, no. Well, I was gonna do my master's, and go and get a job with a big multinational. I did economic policy and international business, so I was always interested in economic policy things. So I was going to do like consultancy in like policy. Like I had those kinds of ideas in mind. Like working in KPMG, PwC, McKinsey, them kind of people, doing something that's in between economic policy, government policy, and business. But then towards the end of my master's, I came across some research that made me really angry, and I decided I wanted to do a PhD.
Oh, what was it?
It was just
Pray tell.
It was just some research, like some of the things that would be observed in developing countries that weren't making sense in the West.
Right.
So then the theory from the West does not really fit, the data from the global South. And, there's people trying to kind of make sense of this phenomenon that they've observed. And they came up with something that I thought was, frankly, really insulting.
Can you say it was racist?
It would have been, yeah. Like, it's so basically what it was, it's just basically how I ended up, like, studying entrepreneurship, having made this shift from, I'm going to do, international business economics. And I ended up in entrepreneurship because I came across work that had found these very high levels of entrepreneurship in developing countries. And Western, researchers in the economics of entrepreneurship and economic development, they couldn't explain that. So they came up with a concept that would basically completely undermine the entrepreneurship in developing countries by saying, there's very high levels of entrepreneurship in those countries because it's necessity entrepreneurship. So it's an inferior type of entrepreneurship. And if you then account for that, you have necessity entrepreneurship and opportunity entrepreneurship, then you get rid of the high levels of if you just looking for good quality entrepreneurship, you discount completely the very high level you're seeing in poor countries. So then you have a nice curve, like graphs in economics, that shows that we don't have this paradox. So I thought that was really insulting, because that wasn't making sense for me. Like, I was seeing people that do entrepreneurship, it's not really because they don't have alternatives. They do it for multiple reasons, including that's really what they want, or that's a family tradition, or what is entrepreneurship anyway. So I decided I needed to study that just so I could, in a sense, I think, just satisfy myself that I've worked out what's going on here. I've unraveled that paradox.
Did
and
you
not just
end up
taken
unraveling the paradox?
I did, yes.
Enlighten me. I want to be enlightened.
Oh no, it's we haven't got enough time for that.
I can't even get cliff notes.
So basically what happened was I went down several rabbit holes, back to the foundations of economic theory, to try and unpack what the concept is and its link to economic development. But then I had to drop it from my PhD, so it ended up being like a hobby horse on the side, because you're not going to get a PhD studying something like that in the modern time. You need to do something tighter and more incremental, not challenging concepts using classical theories from Adam Smith. So that's a really dangerous thing to do. So my supervisor, who was an Indian guy from Cambridge, so my PhD supervisors, one was Birmingham, one was Cambridge. So the Cambridge guy was a development economist who was a professor in Cambridge, having studied in America at Stanford. But he had gone through a similar sort of journey, going from India to America and then coming to the UK and finding that the Western theories do not fit developing countries, and feeling you need to develop, you need to challenge those concepts from the core, and therefore becoming a little bit contrarian and heterodox, which can be a problem. So I sort of had to do that and do safe things that you get a PhD for. And that's how I ended up studying entrepreneurship. And then obviously I became a diaspora person, so I stopped studying entrepreneurship in developing countries because I'm not really living there anymore. I started studying entrepreneurship among migrants and minorities in the UK, people like me. Yeah.
And what did you find?
Well, it's always a complex story. That's, when you do a PhD, you understand it's all about nuance. So,
because I feel like every other person I know is like starting something, like not necessarily a business or not necessarily a concept. Like, I have this very amazing, wonderful friend Patsy, who's just doing so much. She's a creative director here, and she's got her own fashion thing, and it's great. And I have this one friend who's got like a hoodie business, and then I've got this other friend who's making bracelets, and I've got this other friend who's doing makeup, lashes, hair. It's like everyone I know has like uni that they go to. That's their 9 to 5, because uni is a full-time job, let's be honest. And then they've got like their side hustle where they make like their like actual like money. Like, let's work at H&M, let's work at KFC, let's just like, it's not the greatest job, but it's a job. A job is a job is a job. And then they've got like this little, not a hobby horse, because it's not a hobby to them, it's like a passion, it's a creative thing that they like put a lot of love and time and extra thing into. And it's something that I see across the board a lot with my friends of color.
Yeah, I think, because it's sort of that sort of family background, you just don't rely on a 9 to 5. And some of it's culture as well. Like, you see, we've got like huge section of the Kenyan society is Indians, and quite a lot of them are either Gujarati Indians are traditionally traders. That's how they ended up in Kenya. So if you're not doing some business, you're kind of failing your ancestors. So
oh no, that would get into like epigenetics and things happening in other generations and boiling down.
Yeah.
And we don't have enough time for that. Okay, so after your PhD, next steps.
After my PhD, I was going to go back to Kenya. I was really keen on doing that because obviously my parents are there and they were getting into sort of retirement sort of age. Not retiring yet, but that's sort of where I was heading. And I then found myself in a really interesting situation where my son was born, and I'm like, okay, so what do I do now? So
are you an only child then?
No, I've got I'm the second born out of 4, so all my sisters and my brother was the last born. They were all in Kenya at the time.
Oh.
So now it's just my sisters. My brother died in a car crash.
I'm sorry for your loss.
It's all right.
So your son passed. No, your son is born.
So my son's born the same year my son was born when I was literally waiting to graduate the following month. Not the following. He was born in May, graduated in July. So when I finished my PhD in September, I had my viva in December. So we were expecting him, but we didn't really sort of know what the plan was going to be. So so my son is born, and now so my ex-wife, she's from Tanzania, so it was a difficult decision, and I decided I needed to just stay so I could be a proper parent to my son.
Okay, so you stay, but obviously staying requires a plan. So how are you going to stay in that? Because your PhD's over.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, just look for jobs. Loads of applications.
Job hunting is horrible for everyone, I fear. I whenever people with like PhDs are like, yeah, I was job hunting for ages, it just like makes me so scared, because I'm like, you have a PhD.
Yeah, a PhD doesn't really mean anything, because you finish a PhD and you start at the bottom. That's like a minimum qualification for that kind of job. So yeah, it's like finishing uni and applying for a graduate role. So you're finish a PhD and you apply for an academic role, and it's exactly the same. That's the minimum qualification for that kind of job. What do you expect? So that was interesting. So I toured the country a lot. So by this time, obviously, with my son, and I needed to have a car but during my master's days, so you could work with an agency and you're getting sent to all these different places. So I got shortlisted for very many interviews. So I'd go present myself, but not get the job. I got a lot of regret as well, but it's funny because I got shortlisted a lot, and I remember one of my professor friends in Birmingham. So I was teaching economics for him. He's like a big sort of maths and stats guy. And he used to comfort me. He used to say, if you're getting shortlisted, you got 1 in 5. And usually it's more than 1 in 5, because there'll be people that really don't want that job. So it's usually like, 1 in 3, because it's someone looking for a job to get a retention case where they work, or they've applied for a job but they're in France and they come here, they don't like the weather. So usually it's like 3 people really going for it. So in some ways that was comforting, but then in other ways, when you don't get it, you're like, I thought I had a 1 in 3 chance of getting it. Well, what happened? Yeah. So that was interesting. So I did lots of interviews. Some of it was flattering as well, actually. I interviewed for a job in Cambridge. I interviewed for a job in Oxford. I interviewed for a job in Manchester and Southampton. Good universities. It was just I wasn't getting it. But I did get a job at Strathclyde, which is why we moved to Scotland.
So how was the move to Scotland? Because, to be honest, I feel like Scotland's its own whole thing. Like, we're not getting into... I don't mean that in, like, a political way. I just mean, like, obviously, I had spent a lot of time in London, and then I moved here, and it was, like, a completely different thing. Like, people smile at you. And they say thank you to the bus driver. And
yeah.
So how was that?
It was interesting. I was always keen on Scotland because, when I was growing up, so my family is sort of half Catholic, half Presbyterian. So the Presbyterian side of the family has always sort of had that sort of recognition that these two, what we know is 4, but it was like there's 2 types of British people. There's, the Britons from England and the Scots. So the Scots set up, the Church of Scotland, Church Mission Scotland in Kenya, and they were doing different things from the English people that worked for the government. So the Scots were always the nicer ones, doing the education and health, and the missionaries and helping people fight actually against the English. It was so funny. So so I was always very keen on Scotland, and obviously growing up, attending church, the Presbyterian church, you learn about the history of those kind of connections between Kenya, especially where I'm from, where there was a lot of Presbyterianism. So when we moved, it was always like, I've always had these sort of good, thoughts about Scotland, and I wanted to discover that place.
And how was it? How is it?
It was interesting. Like it was just like you said. People were kinder. Mm-hmm. People were more sort of interested in you as a person, and obviously the accent was interesting. Funnily enough, maybe over time you sort of pick up a bit of that twang without knowing. But
you definitely do. You say there are some words you say that it definitely starts sounding.
Yeah, it must be the kids that have taught me. But yeah, so it was a bit like that. It was so when we moved here, obviously with a newborn child, my son was only 3 months, and we loved it. And one of the things we absolutely fell in love with was the fact that, you didn't need to pay for parking at the hospital. That was it. That's what clinched it for us.
That's funny. Okay, so I'm thinking. So obviously this is all about taking your experiences and applying it to young people of today.
Yeah.
So I always ask each guest one thing. So obviously now, through all those struggles, you are now a lecturer at the big University of Edinburgh, which Russell Group, expensive, posh. So my thing is if someone was wanting to go through the path that you did, as in like eventually become a lecturer, eventually like do their PhD, everything, what is one thing they could do right at this moment to start on that mindset, to start on that track?
Well, the first thing is to basically, as I said to you, I had this very uplifting experience, humbling at the same time. It was elevating when I had to do that report for colleagues I used to work with in Birmingham, and it was just that realization that we're not intellectually inferior. Because there's a little bit of that growing up. You see white people being the professors and things, and all of these kind of discoveries and things, or everything that's recognized today as knowledge is Western, and then coming here and seeing, like, from my time doing my masters in Birmingham, and you're hitting those A's and you're in group work with some of the best students from their home countries in Europe and internationally, and you're like, these guys are actually not as smart as I thought they were, and I thought that was really uplifting for me to just validate myself intellectually and get that sort of objective validation as well, because I'm doing well. In fact, I was saying to one of my friends who's now a professor in Glasgow, a white guy, and I was saying to him that the last time I was top of my class was in my village school in Kenya, and then I was hitting some grades top of my class in my master's program in Birmingham, and the last time I was top of my class was in my village school in Kenya, and even then it wasn't like a guarantee. Like, it was quite competitive. Like, sometimes I would be top of my class in some subjects, and I was like, a lot of the guys I went to school with back in Kenya were smarter.
Oh wait, so the last time you were like taught as in someone was better than you was in Kenya? Or
no. So top of the class, like doing really, really well.
Oh, right, okay.
Was in my village school in Kenya growing up. Right. Primary school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it was competitive then, though, like, 5 or 6 guys, we were always competing. And I went to high school. Obviously, the way, the high school you go to depends on their performance from school. So it's other top students from across the country, a lot of them better than you. So maybe I was the top 20, top 30 student.
Okay.
In my high school. And then, there's more filtering when you go to university, and I was nowhere near the top. In my undergrad, maybe I wasn't working very hard. And then I come to this international program in another Russell Group university, top 100 in the world, and I'm top of my class again. Like, wow, it was, so that gave me a lot of confidence.
One last thing. So this is a minute, right?
Okay.
Is there, through this conversation that we've had that's been 40, 50 minutes, is there any time that you've had a question for me? Because I've had questions for you and I've answered them. Has there been any moment? You're allowed to say no.
No, I'm actually quite interested in how, you see yourself from an identity perspective, born in Africa and have no experience, like actual lived experience or memory. And it's just that I'm curious about how it's like being an African without having that African experience.
I'm gonna have to answer you off radio because we've reached the end of our show. Thank you everyone for listening. Is that cheating? I don't think it is.